welcome to my channel. For today's video, I did want to go over first trimester symptoms as well as some helpful tips that helped me get through my first trimester. I'm currently on my 14th week, which is now second trimester, and I'm really excited about that because I will say you do begin to feel a little bit better once you're reaching your second trimester. And if you're watching this, it's probably because you're curious what first trimester symptoms would look like, could look like, since everybody has different symptoms, and then possibly some helpful tips. So that's what today's video will be about. And also, as a disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I'm simply explaining or going over exactly what symptoms I had personally. Doesn't mean that they may be exactly the same for you. And I do have some notes here, so if you see me glancing back and forth, that's what I'm reading off of. I will be very honest with you and say that the first trimester was definitely a little tough, but there are some helpful tips that I have here for you that may help you out. Also, just so everybody knows, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I started kind of tracking and writing all of my symptoms down. So I'm hopeful that this helps you, because I do have a breakdown of kind of like around what week some of these symptoms started. So, and I know everybody is different and you may not even have any of these, but in case you do, I want to make sure that if this can help at least one person, then that's all I care about. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the very first symptom that I noticed, which I would honestly say it was probably like around first or second week, it was extremely tender breasts. So they are just going to be very, very tender. They will continue growing and they will hurt. For me, at least, anytime I hugged somebody, they would hurt. Anytime I jumped, they would hurt. So for a lot of things, they get very sensitive. And that was my very, very first symptom for that. The second symptom was fatigue. I generally love to work out at least 4 to 5 times a week. And I would say that this symptom began around weeks 2 to 3. And I noticed it right away because my energy levels were decreasing dramatically. I felt like I just wasn't really able to work out. I wasn't able to get a lot of things done around the house. I just felt like I needed constant breaks pretty much throughout my whole first trimester, but especially in the beginning, I really, really felt it. So that is the second symptom that appeared around week 2 or week 3 of pregnancy. So far I have first, second, the third one. Also, in a sense, it ties in with fatigue, but weirdly enough, I had a very achy body. There were some days where it felt like I had a cold or the flu. And I know that was definitely not the case. It was just part of my symptoms. But that was one that really stood out to me because I had days where my body was very achy, and then along with that, a lot of dizziness came along with it. And there was one day specifically that I did get sick, but it started with the dizziness. So I felt dizzy, had to sit down, and then suddenly realized that I should probably go to the bathroom because I started feeling sick. So that was one that I was really not a big fan of. I can deal with the rest, but the achy body and the dizziness made it really difficult for me because I almost felt like I wasn't in my body, and I didn't really feel controlled. I didn't really feel like I had control of my body. So it was, I'm already out of breath. So that was definitely one of the worst symptoms for me. And then the next one, which is number 4, is just nausea. I know that they call it morning sickness, but as I'm sure you've already heard, it doesn't just last for the morning time. It can last all day. It lasted me pretty much all day, and it was on and off. I had some days where I felt more nauseous than others, and those days that I felt very nauseous were really, really hard for me. At this point, you're really just trying to survive and make sure that you get that sounds really weird, but in a sense, you're kind of just trying to survive and get through the day so that you have some food in your system, because a lot of the times your body just rejects a lot of it and makes it really difficult to eat. For me specifically, that symptom, the nauseous feeling, began around week 7 or 8. My husband and I actually went on a vacation, and I was probably 5 to 6 weeks pregnant. And then upon our return, which was around week 7 or 8, is when it actually started to hit me, and I felt very, very nauseous. So starting around week 7 or 8 is when it began for me, and then it lasted pretty much all the way to week 13. So I'm currently week 14 right now, and I'm feeling a lot better. I'm able to eat a lot more than I was initially, but that's also a symptom that made it difficult for me, just because I felt weak if I didn't eat, and then if I did eat, I would just feel nauseous. So it's kind of like there's this balance that you have to work with, and it makes it difficult. The last one, which is number 5, was food aversions. So I really just could not eat 3/4 probably of the things that I usually ate. And this also began around week 7 or 8, and I feel like it ties in a little bit with nauseousness, but I'm gonna keep that as a separate symptom. So I would usually eat like an avocado toast with an iced coffee in the morning, and either one of those things I cannot stand. Still right now I can't eat either one of those things. Those were some of my favorite things to eat almost every day in the morning, so it's just been a little tough. I'm definitely craving things that I don't usually go out of my way to eat, and it's weird. You just have to get through the first trimester is what I've seen. Those were my first 5 trimester symptoms. I know everybody has different symptoms, so just to recap, those were my 5 first trimester symptoms. There's a few other things here and there that my body may have felt or that was a little different, like constant urination, but it wasn't that big of a deal to me, and these were honestly the top 5 worst ones for me. So just to recap those really quickly, the number 1 was extremely tender breasts, appearing around the 1st to 2nd week. The second was fatigue, appearing which started around week 2 or 3. A very achy body along with some dizziness came around week 3 or 4. And then number 4, which was a very nauseous feeling, that began around week 7 or 8. And then the food aversions, which was really hard for me, began around week 7 or 8. So those were my top 5. Other than that, I didn't really have any other symptoms that I guess were considered to be a little different or strange. Those are my top 5, and I feel like they're pretty common. It just depends on each person, or everybody has different symptoms. And now to go over some helpful tips or some things that helped me. So for the first symptom, the extreme tender breasts, the only thing I can really say that was helpful for me was just wearing comfortable undergarments and making sure that you're wearing a little more loose clothing, because it does hurt when you have a tight bra on or anything like that. So for the second symptom, which is fatigue, the number 1 tip I can give you is to make sure that you're really listening to your body and just taking a lot of naps. That's the only thing that made me feel better. I could say that I tried getting up from the couch or the bed, because I personally hated that feeling of feeling lazy in a sense, but your body really just needs that rest. So if you're feeling tired, just make sure you take naps. Tying into the third symptom, which was achy body, goes along with just taking a lot of naps, resting. Make sure that you're not trying to force yourself to do a lot of workouts or anything like that, because your body really needs the rest. So those two tie in together, and that helpful tip ties in for both of those. Just make sure you're drinking a lot of water and that you're resting and you're taking your naps, so that way your body can recover. Okay, so this is the main one that I wanted to touch on, which is nauseousness and food aversions, which are the last 2 symptoms. I have a few tips for those, and those are the ones that I felt were the toughest in general. You can get through fatigue because you just take naps. You can get through constant urination, you just go to the bathroom. But with nauseousness and food aversions, it's like, what do you do because your body's asking you for food? You feel hungry. There were days where I felt my body starving in a sense, and I could just hear my stomach growling. But when I tried to actually eat food, it made it really difficult because I would just get very grossed out. So those were the 2 toughest ones for me. And so the tips that I have for you, majority of the time you do begin to feel nauseous right away upon waking up. So if, let's just say I woke up around 7 a.m. for work or anything like that, right away I can feel the nauseous feeling, and that makes it really hard because typically I don't eat at 7 a.m. So the one tip I can give you is, if you need to, keep crackers, keep whatever snacks that you can actually stomach next to you at all times. So that way you can reach and eat a few crackers so your stomach isn't empty. An empty stomach will usually make you feel worse. So I would suggest eat small meals or snacks throughout the day constantly. Try not to be on an empty stomach. If you start to feel nauseous, in a sense, you want to try to force yourself a little bit to at least eat something, because the longer you spend without eating anything, the worse the feeling gets. But if you eat small meals here and there, it'll help alleviate some of that nauseousness. Also, make sure that you're drinking a lot of water to stay hydrated. Another one is step away from foods that have a really strong scent. Trust me whenever I say this, but you'll be smelling everything. You walk into a restaurant and you can smell all these foods. At least that's what happened for me. In fact, I remember that when my husband was making toast one day, I can smell the burning fumes coming from the toaster from the living room. It's really funny and really interesting that you begin to smell literally almost everything. So try to stay away from foods that are that have strong scents and may make you feel nauseous. Try to eat small meals throughout the day to not be on an empty stomach. If you need to eat as soon as you wake up, do that. You don't have to eat a full meal, but have a snack or two. Some foods or things that helped me that I was actually able to stomach were just regular, like saltine crackers. Fruit was something that was really helpful for me, because I was really guilty when it came to not eating healthy during my first trimester, but fruit really helped, and not once did I feel grossed out with fruit. So I'm hopeful that that helps you. Any sort of fruit would work as long as you're able to stomach it. Also, Prego Pops. I will say that for some reason, I had a lot of people suggest those. I really feel like they didn't really work for me. And also the ginger, a lot of the ginger stuff, for some reason, I get personally grossed out with ginger, and I don't know why. I wish I didn't, but it just kind of grosses me out more than helps at all. So I had to stay away from that. But I do know that it helps a lot of people. So if I mention it to you and maybe it'll help you, then that's great. Unfortunately, it didn't really help me. But one thing that did help me as well was just Sprite, Sprite or 7-Up, peppermint in general. Strangely enough, gum, just chewing gum sometimes helped me. So it helped take away the nauseousness for me. Right after I had chewing the gum for a little bit, then I was able to actually go to the kitchen and get something to eat. So it helped take away the nauseous feeling for me. Another weird one that I've never heard anybody say, and nobody has ever mentioned this to me, I kind of just figured that out on my own as I was experimenting with all these different foods on what I can eat and what I shouldn't eat, is that I was actually able to stomach more room temperature or colder foods rather than hot foods. For some reason, a lot of the foods that are consumed hot just didn't sit right with my stomach, and a lot of the colder foods did help. Like fruits helped, ice cream, to be honest. Just a lot of that stuff was a little bit easier on my stomach, and if that helps you, then wonderful. So I wanted to give that a tip as well. Also, there were some days where I felt like if I moved at all, I would get nauseous. Like simply getting off the couch, I felt sick. There were some days where I didn't feel as bad, and a couple of other things that did help me were just gentle stretching, or some prenatal yoga helps as well. I feel like it really helped me feel a little bit better on those days where I wasn't feeling so sick. Also, on those days where you feel really sick and you can't do anything at all because you just get really nauseous and you feel like you're gonna puke, I don't know about for you guys, but for me, my body starts to feel very stiff. It starts to stiffen up a lot, and when I would do a lot of yoga and whenever I would work on like yoga, mobility, and a little bit of flexibility, it helped me just cope throughout those weeks, because a lot of those days were just really tough for me on the days where I felt really, really sick. So the days where I had enough energy and wasn't too nauseous, stuff like that did help. I actually have a treadmill that I purchased, and you can roll it around the house and put it in front of the TV or wherever you need it to be. I like to watch some movies or some of my favorite shows while I walked, and I would try to get at least 30 minutes of walking every day, at the very, very least. If there were some days where I didn't get any other sort of exercise, but at least 30 minutes of walking every day helps, and I would definitely suggest that for you. Okay, so yeah, those were my first trimester symptoms. I had about 5 major ones, and I went over all of those with you today, and then I had a few helpful tips that I also hope helps you out at least a little bit. Even if it's one tip that helps you out, then I feel good about that. I had to do a lot of research and like self-experimenting with a lot of these foods or tips and tricks that I got from a couple of other people, but it literally is very important to realize that every single body is different. What might work for some may not work for others. Just listen to your body and take tips from a couple of other videos. I would definitely suggest that. Do your research. Whatever it is that can help you cope through the first trimester, do it. I hope you picked up something good from this video, and if you have any questions at all, please, please, please leave them down below. I'm more than happy to help. If I can help anybody, I will definitely do that. Let me know if there's any other type of videos you want to see, or any topics that you'd like me to discuss a little bit more, whether it's how I exercise whether it's exercising during the first trimester, what exact foods I ate, literally anything in general. If you have suggestions, comments, questions, leave them down below for me, and I will get to all of your questions, comments, and concerns. Yeah, but thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.